Lift with the back. Oh. It's so heavy. Whew. What's going on, everyone? I hope you're having an awesome day so far, and welcome back to another episode of Chuck's Customs. I promise that title is not clickbait. We are actually converting Bessie to four-wheel drive, and I am super excited about it because I've been planning this for like the better part of a year. And she's gonna be pretty by the time we're done. Speaking of looking pretty, you're probably wondering why we're not focusing on the cab in this episode. And for that, there's a couple reasons. The first reason being, I really didn't want to do 3 episodes in a row of doing just bodywork and priming and sanding and painting, and it's just not what I wanted to do, and I felt like you guys probably wouldn't really be interested in that. Reason number 2, before I lay any paint on any part of the truck, I want to make sure that the bodywork is completely done on every piece, except for the bed. So the cab, the fenders, the doors, the hood, the grill, everything. And as you can see back there, the doors, I haven't even gotten a chance to really get started on yet, but the fenders are done, the cab is done, and we're getting close, guys. It's gonna be very soon. And also the most important reason, number 3, I wanted to mount the transfer case in the frame while the cab is still off. That way I'm not hanging underneath this thing trying to lift this 200-pound piece over my head. Right now I have it completely exposed. We can go ahead, get it mounted, and then we can restore it. So with that being said, let me introduce you to the transfer case. Oh yes. What we have here is an old NP202 transfer case. It came out of an old 60s International pickup truck. It's got 4 high, 4 low, 2-wheel, and neutral. And it works great. So, yeah, I know it's not really much to look at, but that's what we're working with. And quite frankly, I am super excited about it because everything that I've read on the internet, all the research I've done, says that these things are practically indestructible. From what I understand, you can't really kill these things, so that's awesome. The only downside that I've run into so far is that parts can be kind of hard to come by because they're somewhat rare. But that's where this episode's sponsor comes in. That's right, we actually have a sponsor. I can't believe it either. And that is Torque King 4x4. They're an OEM parts distributor based in good old Montana, USA. They supply just about every part you would need for your 4x4 axles, transfer cases, steering components, and new venture transmissions from 1941 all the way up to current models. And they even sell the special tools and service manuals you need to do it. I'm sure I didn't cover everything, so I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can go check them out yourself. That's torqueking.com. So thank you so much, Torque King, for sponsoring this episode. So the transfer case looks like it's in pretty good condition. You don't hear any bearing noise or anything like that, but that's out of the truck. I don't know what it's going to sound like once it's in the truck driving down the road. So just like everything else that I've put in the truck so far, I want to make sure that it's completely gone through, give it nice new bearings, seals, gaskets, even give it a nice paint job to make it look nice, and then we can put it in the truck for good. And thankfully, Torque King was very generous in sending over this whole entire rebuild kit for this NP202. And man, I am excited about it. I've been dying to make this episode since I started talking to them about it like a month ago. I just haven't had any time to get to it. So without wasting any more time, let's get into what this video is all about, and that's going to be mounting the transfer case. And once we have the mounts all set up and fabricated and we know exactly where it's going to go when it's time to do the 4x4 swap, and we're going to take it back out and rebuild it. So let's get to it. Alrighty, let's get to rebuilding this little puppy. Sorry the camera angle is so weird. It's just kind of hard to get like a good view of what I'm doing on the table and all of me at the same time, so I'm just gonna focus on what I'm doing. First order of business, let's get the oil drained out of this little puppy and we can move forward from there. Ooh. Oh, she is thick. All right, so I think the next best step would be removing the cotter pins and castle nuts so we could take the yolks off. So let's do that. I ended up having to order a 1 5/16 socket, and that fits over them perfect. So if you don't have a 1 5/16 socket and you want to rebuild your NP202, you're gonna need to get one. Next step, we're gonna take this big guy off. Okay, so at this point, I feel like it'd be quicker to just tear the whole thing down on a time lapse. And if I have to explain anything to you, I'll do it. Here we go. So this is kind of awkward to try to show you guys. I know I won't be able to film it, but those two forks, I need to take those rods out because I want to replace these seals. But in order to get those rods out, we need to take these forks off. In order to get these forks off, we have these little tiny pins that need to be pushed through. So yeah, I wanted to show you guys what I'm going to be doing because I know I won't be able to film it. So yeah, remove these pins. Once those pins are out, these rods will slide out and then the forks will drop out and we can replace the seals. All right, it's a few days later and I've already forgotten where everything goes. So that's gonna be a fun problem to deal with, but it's not a problem we're gonna deal with right now. First, we gotta get all of this stuff cleaned up. So I'm gonna scrub it down with some diesel fuel, wipe it off, sandblast it, and then we can paint it and put it back together. Let's get to it. from the future. Even though by the time you're seeing this video, I'll technically be in the past, so... Either way, that doesn't matter. Right now, I'm editing this video, and let me tell you, it has been super frustrating because this video is turning out to be way longer than I wanted it to be. So, the sandblasting footage sucks. There's really no good content to it, so we're gonna skip that. So I apologize if you watched this video hoping for some sick sandblasting content, but that's not what this episode's about at all. So, we're gonna skip that and go right into painting and reassembly. Enjoy. It is multiple days later because the paint finally finished drying. That stuff takes forever to dry, but it comes out with a really nice finish, so I recommend it in that aspect. But now that it's completely dry, everything's been cleaned, we're 100% good to go on putting this baby back together with that rebuild kit. So let's see if I can remember how this thing goes back together. So I think the best way to start would be reinstalling all of these seals and that little cup bearing. Okay, so my goal is going to be to put this beast back together the same way that I took it apart. So if I'm remembering correct, I'm about 99% sure that the selector forks came out last, so they have to go back in first. But before I put anything back inside, I have some 85W140 gear oil here. I'm just going to put a little bit in that cup there. That way I can go ahead and just kind of wipe everything down with the lubricant before we put it back in. Even car parts need a good moisturizing routine. Come on guys, don't skimp on. Now I did forget to mention this when I took this apart. When you take these rods out, you'll see right there that there's a little ball bearing. Now there's a spring that bearing sits on that pushes it up, and it pushes it up into these little recesses here. And you have those on both shafts. And what that does, that allows the shafts not to move when you're in a certain gear. Otherwise, every bit of torque you'd get would clunk the thing out of gear and you'd have to hold the lever in place. So you have the bottom one in there, and then you have this little guy that sits between them. So when the bottom one is out, the top one can't also go out. The top one stays locked back because this little guy is going to be locking it in place. But once you pull this one back, it unlocks this and allows you to pull this one forward. So it's basically a safety mechanism. And this little guy is important. So you have a ball bearing on the bottom, this little guy, and then you have another bearing and spring on the very top. All right, I don't see any leaks anywhere, so that's awesome. I was really afraid I was gonna have to go back through and use RTV at some point, but the paper gaskets are holding up great. Let's run it through a quick functions check just to see if I put all the gears back the way they're supposed to. Unlike all of my other projects, I don't have any leftover nuts or bolts or washers or anything like that, so they should have all gone back in the same way they came out. All right, we're gonna test two-wheel drive, which is the bottom shaft all the way out, top shaft all the way in. The rear yoke is spinning along with the front one, so that's awesome. Let's try 4 high, which we just had it in, so we know that works. Bottom shaft all the way in, top shaft all the way out, should be 4 low. Awesome. And then 1 click in, should be neutral. Yes. I love it. And it honestly came out better looking than I expected. So that's awesome. So although Torque King 4x4 is the sponsor of today's episode, they did specifically ask me to give an honest review of what I thought about the kit. So without being the slightest bit biased, I can honestly say that I am thoroughly impressed with how nice that kit was. As you can see, I used every single part except for, it comes with a couple extra needle bearings and a couple extra gaskets, probably in case you mess up or if you need clearance because of thickness issues or what have you. But honestly, I couldn't have asked for anything better. It had every gasket and seal that I needed. It had every bearing that I needed. Fitment was perfect, so I really would highly recommend it if you're rebuilding a 202, and I'm sure their kits for the 203s and 205s and everything else is probably just as good. So thank you again, Torque King 4x4, for sponsoring this episode. If you guys want to check them out, I'm going to have a link for them down below in the description. Also, if you want to help support the channel and get some awesome merch in the process, head on over to chuckscustomshop.com. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and show that thumbs up button some love. If you didn't like what you saw or you have questions or comments, let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you guys. And as always, if you want to see what we're getting into next time, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. So thank you again, everyone, so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of Chuck's Customs.